Welcome to Wisła in Poland. We're here at the annual conference of the European Leadership Forum, which is a coalition of evangelical Christian groups seeking to do what no single organization could do alone, provide a bridge between God's global resources and local leaders from all over Europe. I'm joined by Camille Kampouris, Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Catholic University of America. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She has appeared in a wide range of stage and broadcast productions, from improvised comedy to advertising voiceovers. One of Jim Henson's Muppeteers for 12 years, Camille appeared on Sesame Street for 10 seasons. She co-wrote and performed the character of Eddie in the Christian home video series Ben and Eddie. Welcome, Camille, to the studio.
Well, thank you.
We are definitely improvising here. So,
incidentally, Phi Beta Kappa is an honor that you get in college, and you get a key. And it was the key that opened no doors in my life, because I later went on to perform. So.
That's brilliant. Well, I did polymer technology as an MSc. So you've worked on the iconic programs in this whole field, which is the Muppets and Sesame Street.
I didn't do the Muppet Show. I came right after.
Okay.
I was about 10 seasons on Sesame Street, and then of course did a lot of videos and specials on Christmas and Easter, and traveled with them.
But in the context of this conference, one of the great burdens in terms of reaching the culture is how can we get into media and the arts. So could I just ask first how you came to know the Lord, and what was your Christian journey that led to you being able to serve the Lord in this area?
Yes. Well, I was raised a Catholic. I was raised in a lovely house where we revered God. I prayed every night before I went to bed. But by the time I was in high school, I sort of fell away, didn't have a need for God. And I moved to New York to be an actress. And so for 1 year, I struggled. I was not prepared for the amount of rejection I received in New York. I would go to an audition, and there would be 700 people there. And before I would even start to sing, they would go, next. They would type you out. So you weren't the type they wanted. So just that kind of rejection day after day. And I remember talking to a comedian one night about this, and he suggested that I take a comedic improvisation course to get me back, to get my confidence back.
Yeah.
And in this class, I met two Christians that were brilliant. And so I was first attracted to their talent. And they started so I pursued them. I wanted to talk to them after class, and they witnessed to me, and they sort of gave me books to read. But they gave me one verse that probably is the verse that I think just touched my heart so much. They said, if you'll delight yourself in the Lord, He will give you the desires of your heart.
Wonderful.
And of course, I didn't know what my purpose was. What was I doing in New York with all this rejection, and what was I supposed to do with my life? So I wanted the last part, the desires of your heart, but I didn't know how to do the first part. And so they led me in a prayer. I accepted Christ. I began my journey with Him, and that verse was really the verse that I meditated on for my first many years, actually, as a Christian. Because delighting in God is different than obeying Him. It's different than trusting Him. You delight in children, you delight in your spouse. It was really about sort of falling in love with Christ through the Word, through intimacy. So that was my early years. And
so it sort of, you were able to have your cake and eat it. you could actually enjoy the Lord, but also enjoy your profession.
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
It wasn't contradictory.
No, well, that's one of the benefits of being an out-of-work actress. You have a lot of time on your hands. So I would spend lots of time with God. But growing up, always wanting to be an actress, I was a bit of a loner. I had friends, but I would spend hours preparing a monologue, doing my singing, my music. And so I just really took to being alone with a friend now, being alone with God. So.
Because it's a tough profession on two fronts. One, finding work, But also being a Christian, you know, some people don't sort of put the two together, you know,
no, it's rare.
Media and the arts and entertainment with, you know, Christian faith.
It's very rare. I mean, in show business, you know, you talk about unemployment figures in Europe, there's about 85% unemployment in, you know, our union, so it's very hard, yeah.
And then in terms of the actual culture, I'm talking as an outsider, but Hollywood, you know, show business and the like, spiritually quite difficult to actually engage, even though you said you met Christians within it.
I met very few Christians, and actually, certainly none at Muppets. I was alone. Later, a few came, but in the early days, I was pretty much alone there. Yes, it's very much a mission field. There are very few. You know, there are groups here and there in different, you know, in the costume union, in this union. But you don't see, you don't meet a plethora of Christians. More and more today, and more in America today. But when I was working, it was pretty.
Could you explain? You've mentioned the term Muppets. You know, many people would know the Muppets, but as a genre, let's say, is it only the Muppets, or is it? It's not just puppetry.
It's not puppetry. It's puppets that are created and work for Jim Henson's organization. I mean, he's dead now, but the Muppets created that term, and it's their form of puppetry, which was television puppetry. They really created that genre. I mean,
and
really
just give us a little overview of the history of it, when it started with Jim Henson.
Jim Henson started in the 60s and started with commercials. And then he did, I think the first show he did was Sesame Street, but it was a kids show. And then he decided to do a nighttime show for adults, and no one in America was interested, none of the networks, and Sir Lou Grade in England was interested, and so he gave him carte blanche to do the Muppet Show, which they were all done in England. And then after that he started doing movies, and it was hard for the networks in America to catch up to the fact that this was not just a children's show, that this could be entertaining for adults. And so, you know, Jim Henson proved that. But it's this technique of bringing puppets to camera. And he did that successfully by giving us all monitors. So we always are watching our performance, which keeps the puppet alive, you know. Because if the eyes go dead, the puppet goes dead. So if you watch your performance, you know how to, you know where to put the...
And is it filmed live? Because
No.
it seems as though none of it's filmed live.
No, it would be hard to film live, because your head can pop into a shot, and there goes the shot. You know?
I'm showing my ignorance now, but the one got the sense, certainly with, maybe sort of mixing things up here, with Sesame Street, that it seemed to be a lot of live elements to it.
There are people, live people. I mean, we're always interacting with actors, but I thought you meant, when you said live, we don't have a live audience.
No, okay.
We had guests that would come to the show. You could have as many as 8 guests a day, but we interact with, that was part of the beauty of Muppets, is that we didn't see ourselves as a separate fantasy world. We were just puppets that lived with humans, you know, so we could do anything, we could play instruments. And
so as I've opened up this whole idea of how they do it, do they film with a number of takes and then take the best one, or?
Well, Sesame Street, almost, because it was quick. It was a daily show. We almost edited live, so we had a control room and we were sort of mapped it out. But yes, otherwise it's edited later. You do number. You know, it's exactly like a movie. You know, you put together a movie.
Wow.
You know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I know there's a sock down to your left. Just so people, those who are thinking, what on earth are they talking about?
Okay, so my husband
we have a visual aid. We have a visual aid.
Okay, I don't.
That's not
actually,
not a used sock.
You know, this is actually the first time I've puppeteered with a sock, because they give us puppets.
Just for people to know, this is live.
This is live, yes. And this is essentially what Muppets do. You know, we do this.
So that is Kermit the Frog, isn't it?
It's the blue one, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Tim, Vince. Hi. You have 2 first names. That's great.
It is very
Tim and
confusing.
Vince? I have one first name only.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to meet you. Yeah, people still cannot work out whether they're
Where to
meeting
look.
Tim or Vince.
Well, I just use both. Tim Vince. So,
The amazing
this
thing
is
is
a puppet.
it doesn't have any eyes, but it looks
No, it does.
almost
Well,
human.
This is a sock, but normally there'd be eyes here.
Yeah.
And this is you drop your thumb when you do a puppet.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd be throwing the
And
eyes back.
so you can
I
play
thought
an
like that,
angry,
yeah.
an angry look. Can you do an angry?
You could
Okay.
even do growl. You could
and-
do, happy is this is lip syncing. So I'm actually
Oh yeah. Go on.
Saying the words here, yeah. So happy, yay! You might jump up and down.
And a sort of
Might-
look that's saying, what kind of question's that?
well, you might pull in your face and go,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
Exactly. How old are you?
or you might do a double take and go,
That's six.
Wow! That's nuts, Tim Vince.
That is amazing. We might we'll stay there.
Stay
Don't
there.
go away. Don't go away. You're part of the show now. Basically, how much training?
well.
Because that looks, you've got to get it right, don't
Yeah,
you?
it's well. Well, actually, my journey. I should tell you how I got to Muppets.
Yes.
I was not a puppeteer. Right after I became a Christian, I then went into 5 years of working in comedic improvisation. So I was really a theater comedian working in sketches, and they were very, very tough years. I had no financial security. I had very little money, no job security. I worked very little except in my comedic improvisational show on stage. But you look back and you think, thank God for those years. That's how God trained me. Because learning comedic improvisation, I don't know if you go out on stage.
I need educating on this.
And you don't know what you're going to do. You have technique, but you have no idea what you're going to do because you take the first suggestion the audience gives you. So if I say, hi, we're going to create a novel now. What kind of novel is it? And they'll say, Gothic. And you go, thank you. Where is this Gothic novel situated in? And they'll say, the Wild West. And you're like, thank you. Now I have to do a Gothic novel in the Wild West, Maybe I'll be Betty Sue, a consumptive orphan. So you do this all live on the spur of the moment. But those were the years that I learned to trust God. I used to go out on stage and I would pray and I'd say, Lord, if you don't show up, I'm not going to have any ideas here. And God would, it was sort of like going to the edge of the cliff and throwing yourself off and just saying, Lord, please catch me. And in these 5 years, I learned to depend on God. I learned to trust Him. My prayer life was essential. I spent a lot of time with God and in the Word, and He was always there. Every night I did something different, unique, clever. I mean, it was totally not unbeknownst to me. I would actually sometimes laugh at my own jokes because they were so new to me. My director would say, could you just stop laughing at your own jokes, but I had not heard them before myself, so.
But isn't it much more fun than just having a script?
It's fun. It
Yeah.
can be terrifying, but that's the other thing. God took away fear. He just kept training me night after night to trust Him, Him. And so when the Muppet audition came along, I thought, this is bizarre. I'm not a puppeteer. Why do they want me to audition? So I thought it was my voices because those 5 years I developed a lot of characters, a lot of voices. I really honed my craft. And so when I got to Muppets and I auditioned, I was so free. I trusted God. I so surrendered my career to Him that night they asked me, well, pick up a puppet and let's see your audition. So I just put a puppet on, and because I wasn't a Muppeteer, I just shook the puppet.
Yes.
So I mean, a puppet is basically just doing this, but I was good at improv, had characters, and they didn't quite know what to do with me. They didn't, well, we can't hire her because she doesn't know how to puppeteer. So they took me on and trained me. They said, but we like your characters. Can we train you? So that's how I started. And I went into a lot of training, but it wasn't as long as they said. They said it would take 4 years. Within 1 year, I was a lead Muppeteer.
Wonderful. One gets the sense that certainly from my kids, when you put up a character like that, they completely ignore the adults. They're totally focused on the puppet, let's say, or something that's child friendly.
Yes.
It can be enormously influential.
Yes, you did the same thing, Tim.
It completely.
You were watching me, Tim.
I was, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Don't you feel silly?
you know, it's moving from, let's say, comedy to actually trying to introduce a message, or not moving from it, but through the entertainment to actually get a message across.
Yes. I mean, Muppets, you know, Sesame Street taught. It was educational. So we did it on 2 levels. We would have a great, we would do a movie takeoff, but we were teaching the alphabet, for instance. Yeah.
One thing people lament in the Christian world is the lack of Christian presence, let's say, the lack of Christian message in the entertainment world. And you see that many people even form their views by watching, whether it's, you know, just comedy, because comedy can be quite cutting, can't it? Or, you know, early kids programs.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting you should say comedy. I had determined as a Christian I was going to be very clean. So on stage, there was no bad humor, there was no dirty humor. Today, and thank God I ended up in Muppets. The Lord just guided my career. But today, comedy has become, it started back in the 70s with some of the stand-up comedians. It's become so filthy, so perverted, and it's such a shame because it's a great gift from God. You know, I'm actually working on a project now to bring back some of the great comedians of the 50s. I'm working on a documentary that are just hysterical. Yeah. Hysterical, and they don't do anything dirty. It's observational humor, you know. And but yeah, the number of Christians in the business are growing now only because Hollywood, I think, is catching up to the fact that there's a big market for this. You know, there are people that want to, you know, with the Passion of the Christ, they couldn't believe the market.
The audience was enormous. Yeah, so you, from a Christian perspective, you want to keep it pure or at least neutral, let's say, but there's the other, and this seems to be a very difficult circle to square, is how to get a Christian message across. That's a challenge.
Right. Well, there's 2 things. If you're going to do Christian entertainment, you have to get a Christian message across, and that's, you know, you've already written it. Presumably your production company is Christian, but to be a good artist who happens to be a Christian, that's different. You just have to be excellent at what you do. You know, if you're going to go into this business, there's all the eyes are on you when you say you're a Christian. So be excellent, and God will give you the opportunities. You know, if you're going to be in this business, my experience was I turned down more work than I took because it wasn't appropriate. So you really have to, you know, trust God first, and He has to be your treasure. You know, where your treasure is, there is your heart. The career has to take a back seat. It has to be more like a mission than a
So
calling.
how let's say, does one produce, knowing that generally, as we see, you know, on YouTube and everything else, things that are perverted and corrupted are popular. How do you get the Christian message across in a popular way? Because it's judged ultimately by the number of clicks or the audience. Well,
it depends. If you're doing a Christian show, you know, you've presumably done a good script or whatever, and I mean, are you talking more in ministry or in the secular world?
Yeah, I've liked to see both. I mean, we all dream of you know, the mass market appreciating some of, you know, the Christian content.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually working on another project to bring the movie The Life of Bonhoeffer to life. But there are projects out there where there are movie scripts all the time being written. You know, not as much as we would like to see, but because there's a market, there are more and more, and today, you know, with the internet, with independent production films, you can do a lot more. You don't have to just break into in America, we had 3 big networks. You don't have to just break into those networks, because they're frankly not interested in Christian material. They're pretty hostile to Christianity. But There's more and more, look at Mark Burnett, for instance, who just did the Bible series. He's one of the most successful producers in Hollywood. And he and Rona Downey, his wife, just did the Bible series. So it's happening more and more. If you are called to this business, God has to make a way. It is making a way in the desert, You have to be called. And then the opportunities come, He'll lead you.
Could you describe the Ben and Eddie series? Again, to a punter who
Well,
doesn't
the
know
Ben and
much.
Eddie series, it's no longer around. It was
Yeah.
something I did in the 90s. It was a video series.
Yeah.
We don't even have video anymore. But it was to address, it was my way also of giving back a little bit. I did it at Muppets. I used their production. I used their puppeteers. I used their everything. It was a Christian video series. The main character was a little dog born in Central Park and abandoned by his mother. And he is adopted. And through this little puppet, who happened to be a great pianist and could sing, and we sort of addressed issues for little children, abuse issues. We addressed coming to know the Lord, coming to fall in love with the Word, all these, we also addressed forgiveness and disappointments. It was like a little children's series that some friends and I in New York did. And it sold a lot for several years, and then we sort of tapered off and we did other things.
You've mentioned delight yourself in the Lord, He'll give you the desires of your heart. Are there any other verses that have really helped guide you in your calling and in this area?
Oh yes, there's a lot of verses. I mean, when I first got saved, seek ye first the kingdom of God was my verse. That just right away set my priorities, because my career was my idol. It was everything to me. Another verse was Exodus 33. There were so many different avenues to go down in show business for me that I really didn't want to go. When Moses says, if I don't want to go unless you come with me, Lord, there were jobs, there were people who were telling me to move to Los Angeles, for instance, because all the comedy is cast out there. Very little was cast in New York. But I didn't want to go anywhere if he wasn't leading me, so I would constantly pray that prayer. Big one, if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. Which answers sort of a lot of your questions, because when you lose your life to Christ, it might be very difficult to break into show business, but it happens. I mean, I wasn't even a puppeteer, and I joined the Muppets. They trained me, and I was one of their main female puppeteers. So when I lost, but that happened after a lot of surrender. I really lost my life to Him and said, okay, I'll do whatever. And Muppets called. There was, I used to, when the director would count down, in a television series, they'll count down 5, 4, 3, and then in your mind you count down 2, 1, 0, and then you act. I used to mouth, I would look into the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. And the directors, once the director came up to me and said, Camille, what are you doing? Are you like that nervous? Are you saying your lines? Because actually in Muppets, we have our lines taped to our monitor. We don't even have to memorize them. And I said, no, I'm actually saying a Bible verse. But that was a big one for me, because for me, I had to depend on God for everything, including physical strength. It's tiring, and I was, I'm actually the smallest puppeteer they've ever had.
Really?
Yeah,
it's like
those are some of my favorite verses.
He'll keep you coming onto the stage and you're going off the stage. He'll keep you from the lights turning on to the lights turning off, from this time forward, even forevermore. I've sort of focused on people that are anxious at reaching this whole culture of ours through media and entertainment. But I suppose the other element which led you to the Lord was just personal evangelism of people within the profession. How have you found the sharing of your faith, considering it's a pretty busy lifestyle, to actually reach your colleagues?
Well, that's because I really surrendered my career. It was a mission field for me. So I was constantly having one-on-one conversations. It's such a mission field. The people there, success brings a lot of destruction. So I was constantly talking to someone about, they might have a broken marriage, or their children were being destroyed by their mom's career, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of no amorality, really. So personal evangelization was what I did all the time. I sort of saw myself as incognito, like this missionary and an actress's. But there are a lot of people in the business. You wouldn't know it. There's makeup artists and models and so there's a lot of people that do witness to you, and it's growing. That's the joy of it.
And before we end with a little bit more Muppetry, could we could I ask, what if you were to sort of give one or two pieces of advice to someone who's young, wants and feels called to a career in the arts and entertainment, what would your advice be to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is God does not need another performer. Bad advice maybe, or good advice. And the world doesn't need another performer. But God needs servants. And so if you can enter this career with that, the problem with show business or the arts is that it's all consuming. You are the product. And so you have to give that to the Lord. You have to die to that and allow Him to move you and work through you. So if you can be a servant, you really make it, if it's really a calling, and then if it is a calling, my biggest advice is to protect yourself, to protect your heart, to have accountability, to be in the Word, to spend a lot of time with Him, to be grounded in a church. The tendency in the arts is there's no rules. Marriages don't count. You just do what you want. The more success you have, But I was always really grounded. I was like the church lady at Muppets. Sundays I would come late to a reading because I was in church, and I was working in the inner city church and with children, and I was always had a prayer partner when I would go to England who would call me, and so that's
wonderful.
Protect your heart.
Okay, so we've got the final minute. My kids may be watching this.
Okay,
so some profound message to my kids.
How about a song? Because we have really incredible choreography as a Muppeteer. It's basically right, left, right, left. That's our choreography. And middle. So we bounce a lot. This is a Muppet walk, by the way. So when Muppets walk, they go, yay! And they walk off stage. So we'll do a song, okay?
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to Him belong, they are weak, but He is strong.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll sing the rest of that off air. Thank you very much, Camille. It's a real
pleasure. It's
privilege.
Great being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
And thank you also to you, our audience. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And we, on all of these interviews, say if you want to hear any of these and see any of the answers to these questions, you can go onto the focalonline.org website, foclonline.org. Goodbye.